Welcome to Soul Conversations with Z, Healing in the Raw, where we keep it raw, real, and unfiltered. I'm Zachyra Rodriguez, a trauma specialist and marriage psychotherapist, and this is a space where we dive deep into the messy, yet beautiful and often difficult parts of life. Here we challenge ourselves to face our fears and dig deeper into self-discovery. I'm no newbie. I've navigated many rocky roads and consider myself a recovered traumaholic. Life hasn't been easy, but I truly believe that everything happens for a cause greater than ourselves. Whether you're navigating with grief or grappling with trauma, healing from attachment injuries, or working on your marriage, we're here to unpack it all. No sugarcoating, just honest conversations about the struggles we face and the growth that comes from them. You matter, you are loved, even before your existence, and you're created to do great things. So grab a seat, my friend, take a long, deep breath, and let's get real together. So let's begin. Hey everyone, welcome back to Soul Conversations with Z, Healing in the Raw. And today is going to be a little bit personal, but first I want to tell you where I'm actually recording, because some people ask me about like what therapeutic room I'm in. So this room is actually the Healing Hearts room, and it says where hope is restored. So this room is like very greenish. Actually, I'm wearing green today, and that was not on purpose, but it's just I just love this greenery, and it says where hope is restored. And we're all looking for hope, right? So today's conversation is going to be pretty personal for me. And honestly, I went back and forth trying to figure out like, okay, what am I going to record? Should I record this? Because see, May and June, they're very difficult months for us, for me. And it's Anthony's birthday, my son Anthony. This was this past Tuesday. And Mother's Day was this past Sunday. And next month is the month of Anthony's passing. So it's a loaded 2 months. And then afterwards is my husband and my birthday. We're actually just one day apart. So Anthony, if you don't know my story, Anthony's my oldest son. He was 24 years old when he passed. And he passed away due to an autoimmune disease that he developed after contracting a sinus infection. One thing led to another. And 3 weeks later, he was gone. We never even imagined that he would have left us due to a sinus infection. It attacked his body, it attacked his spleen, it attacked pretty much how he was walking, his joints, it attacked his speech. Imagine, he was actually studying to be a speech pathologist. And there was no way that we knew that this would happen in 3 weeks. It also attacked his immune system. So it was very traumatic for us. And so as you could see, May and June, they carry so much weight, they carry so much emotions, they carry so much memories. And the thing with grief is like it comes in wave, right? It's like in and out. 1 minute you're laughing, and the next minute you're like in full-blown mama drama with yourself, right? And as I share, I just want to be able to speak honestly. I don't want to speak as a therapist. I don't want to speak like if I'm teaching. I want to speak as a mom and as a woman, someone who lost their firstborn, right? And who misses their son. I miss my baby. And as Christians, sometimes we can become very spiritual and spiritualize things, not knowing that we are body, soul, and spirit. And we are composed of emotions. And even Jesus, when he was here, right, he had emotions as well. Think about in John 11, right? Jesus wept, right? And he grieved, right? He cried. And people forget that, right? I think that people really forget that tears are not a form of weakness, but it's showing us that it's an emotional language, right? That we're blessed to have, right? Because through our tears, we speak sadness, we speak joy, we even speak fear, we speak grief through the showing of these tears, right? But people don't really understand what grief is. And grief is like a language, right? And it shows up so different in so many different people, right? And depending how you grieve, right? So one thing that I've learned about grief is that people become uncomfortable with it. And over time, you know what happens? They don't want to hear about it. They're done with it. They're done with your grief, right? So in the beginning, there's like all the support and people call you, they're feeding you, there's tons of prayers, there's tons of check-in. But as time passes, you know what ends up happening? People slowly expect for you to be okay, right? They expect for the tears to kind of slow down. They expect you to move on. Yeah, they tell you pretty much like, okay, are you done? And sometimes, even though they didn't mean it, people become what I call grief blockers. So let me just explain this for a little bit. What grief blockers, what that is. It's a person that makes someone feel like if they're not allowed to grieve, and even openly, right? So these are the people who may like rush you through your grieving process. They minimize your pain. They avoid these uncomfortable conversations. They want to switch the topic, and they expect you to just be like, okay, I'm done, right? Even though you're not emotionally ready for that. And sometimes it could look like this. They'll be like, be strong. You should be over this by now. At least they lived a long life. Girl, everything happens for a reason. Don't cry. Let me see what else. Just stay busy. At least you have other kids. Heaven needed an angel. Are you over it now? Are you kidding me? Yes, I had somebody say that. So let me just say this. While many people, I get it, they mean well, these responses that can unintentionally really shut down the grieving process, right? They can make someone feel unsupported, unseen, and guilty for even hurting. You imagine that? These grief blockers, they struggle. They struggle with sitting in your pain, right? And instead of making space for the grief, you know what they end up doing? They want to silence it. They want to fix it. They want to distract you, and they want to rush it, like hurry it up. So this past Sunday on Mother's Day, yes, it was Mother's Day. So let me just set this scene for you because I have a little story. So I'm in my feelings. It's Mother's Day. And my biggest desire is for me to be with all three of my babies. Yes, I'm having a moment. I'm at the altar, right? That's what we call it, And someone had said something to me that upset me to my core, right? So I'm at the altar. Let me go back. And it's one of those like boohoo moments, the one where there's like snot and you're crying, like your body is making these movements, and you're like crying hysterically, right? Well, it was one of those moments. Yes, Mother's Day. So a really nice longtime elder that I know of the church, Sister P, she comes up and I turn around because I see, and I'm like, because, when somebody comes and they put their hands on you and they're laying hands and, so I'm curious. I'm like, who's praying for me? So I turn around and it was Mama P. And I was like, yes, okay, it's her. So she's ministering to me. She's ministering to my hubby and she's praying over us, right? We were a hot mess. Okay, so finally I get myself together and, I'm drying my eyes, I'm wiping my nose, I'm fixing my clothing because it's Mother's Day. So, I had to look. I was looking pretty good. I was looking like a hot tamale, with a good drink. So I was looking good. I love me some Coca-Cola from time to time. But after all that boohooing, I'm sure my face wasn't looking too hot. So now I'm walking back, after I got myself together, right? Nope, wrong. This other woman, she sees me. She purposely comes towards me. Yes, okay, it was intentional. She comes towards me and she's waiting for me and she gives me this huge hug. Now, if you're having like a boohoo moment and somebody gives you a hug, what do you think is going to happen? You're going to have another boohoo moment. So I had another boohoo moment. Wrong person. This is what this woman said to me. I could not believe it because at first, like she's hugging me and I'm like, oh my gosh. And then I'm like, okay, it feels like a safe space. No, this lady told me to stop crying. Yes. And then she tells me, just be happy. He's in heaven. Yes. I had to pause. So let's just pause here for a minute. Let's just process this together. What I just said to you. I'm at the altar. Mama P is great. I come back. And then this woman tells me to stop crying. I literally pushed back and I was like, oop, this is no bueno, right? And I remember I was feeling so hurt because I felt like I had handed something over to this woman that was so sacred. My grief baby is what I call it. So let me just explain what that looks like. When grieving people share their grief with you, they're not handing you weakness. They're handing you something so sacred and something so special. It's like a baby, right? They're tender. It's something very vulnerable. And that's what a baby is, right? You're not going to hand your baby over to anyone. So it's something that's so connected to the love for this person. And when people dismiss it or they rush it or they try to silence it, it could feel so, so painful. And let me just tell you this, because this is tough, right? For people to understand joy and grief, they can coexist. Yes, they can. I can love God and I can still grieve. I can smile 1 minute and then I can ache. I can help others heal. And guess what? And I'm still carrying wounds myself. Imagine that I can laugh 1 moment and I could still miss my son and cry the next. And I could be okay with that. See, those things, they all coexist together, and that's okay. So one time I had a really, really good friend at the time, and she called me out every single time I laughed. She would be like, "Oh, this is how you need to be. This is how I want to see you." Every time she saw me laughing, that was the most irritating thing I would feel in my stomach. I had to literally question myself and ask if I was overreacting. Can you believe that? Yes, I did. It caused such a huge impact and really had me questioning my grief. And if there's one thing that I regret in this healing journey is giving this person so much power for me to question if I was grieving my son correctly. See, you see, the reality of all this, and especially if you've lost a son or a child or a daughter, I think that sometimes people assume that because we're functioning, because I'm working, because I'm showing up, because I'm laughing, right? That, oh, you're already done, because I'm showing up and I'm encouraging others, that the grief somehow magically it disappeared. It just stopped. It went bye bye. And now we live happily ever after, or that's what they think. But grief doesn't disappear, people. See, when you lose someone you deeply, deeply love, especially a child, yes. I remember going to see a therapist. Yes, therapists see therapists. Don't be, shocked. But that's a topic for another day, right? But I remember going to see this therapist and I was like, oh my gosh, am I over exaggerating? And no, you don't get over losing a child. You just learn how to carry that loss. You learn how to breathe around the aches and the pains of your heart. You learn how to act in front of your other kids when you seem to pretty much be like breaking on the inside. When you see them acting a certain way, you're like, wow, it reminds you of that other person. For me, it reminds me of Anthony. But you learn how to continue living while parts of your heart still remain somewhere else because your heart is broken into pieces. For me, it's shattered and no one can put it back together exactly the way that it was, right? Except for Jesus Christ. But the scars do remain. So think about it. When Jesus went to the cross, right? There's a reason why when he went through the resurrection, he still showed them the scars. See, I was thinking about this like, wow, why is it that he didn't come back without the scars? It was to show others of what he had been through. So they could know and believe him that even though their hearts were broken, he was still with them. And he was always going to be with them in spirit, even though he was leaving, right? But they were still sad. And only God could heal that broken heart. And honestly, some days they're harder. Some days are harder than others. And other days, it feels a little bit lighter. But birthdays are hard, holidays are hard, celebrations are hard. Listening to certain songs that Anthony used to sing, oh my gosh, those are hard. Seeing his friends, as they're growing up, sometimes it's hard because even though I love them and I smile, sometimes it's so hard because I wonder what ifs, a lot of what if, right? Watching life just continuing, moving through, while part of me silently is grieving the past, the memories. And grief is just so strange because there's so many triggers and they can come out of nowhere, right? Sometimes you're perfectly okay. And then suddenly you see someone, a smell, someone that looks like him. I may see a picture, a laugh, that sounds kind of like his, or memory, right? And it just hits like, oh, so deep. And honestly, I miss the simple things about him. I miss Anthony's voice. I miss his laugh. I miss his presence in the house. I miss the chaos. I miss the conversations. I miss everything about him. And I think that people, they don't always understand that grief is connected to love. I'm going to say that again. Grief is connected to love. And the reason why people grieve, and they grieve hard, is because it hurts so deep. And it's because love existed. They existed. Anthony existed. And that's why we celebrate him every May 12th. We celebrate him. And some people may not understand that, and that's okay. But I will tell you a little bit about how we celebrate and how, we kind of deal with the grief, because grief appears different to so many. We had to learn in our own family that every single person was grieving different, and that was okay. So even though I understand that people mean well, the actions sometimes they're just not well. So this past Tuesday, we celebrated Anthony. We celebrated his birthday. We had friends come over, and it was just such a beautiful yet sad day, right? As our family, right, we're really, really big on birthdays. Birthdays is like a huge celebration. So we're that type of family that we wait until midnight and then we sing happy birthday and we celebrate the person whose birthday it is. And although Anthony is no longer with us physically, we still celebrate him. And it just so happened that we're all together. So it was 12 o'clock midnight. Yes, we were up. So during the day, after that, in the morning, we went walking. Then my husband and my daughter and I, we went to breakfast. And then we continued this tradition that we do every single year, that we go to the beach. We'll spend some time there. And then afterwards, his friends came over. And honestly speaking, it just touched my heart so, so much just to see how they showed up. To see his friends come together still after 9 years, is going to be next month of his passing. Like, to hear them laugh and share stories and just remember him, that was powerful. That was like my gift. And we laughed, we cried together, we shared memories. It was powerful. And I was just sitting there, like, looking at them and just feeling so thankful to God that all these people showed up for him, and they reached out. They were like, "Hey, Mom, what are we doing for Anthony's birthday?" And just remembering and just seeing how they honored him. I mean, that was priceless. And one of Anthony's friend's son, he's only 7 years old, 7 years old. And he said something that was like mind boggling. He said, it was his turn to speak. And he says, "I hear the angels crying, happy birthday." Oof, that was, yeah. And it was just like, oh my gosh. And he goes on to say, "And it fills my heart with joy. And I just want to smile." This is out of the mouth of a babe. He's 7 years old. And then he says, "I just felt that, God was telling me to speak up, not to be shy." And honestly, that was just like my gift. It was just so powerful. So I want you to know that grief does not have a timeline. And I want people to know, those that are hearing me today, is that grief does not have a timeline. I have to repeat that. It doesn't matter how many years have passed. It doesn't matter what society says. Love does not expire. Grief does not expire. It just doesn't go away. It doesn't disappear. We live with the scars. Yes, the relationship is totally different, but the love will always be there. And sometimes grieving people, it's sad. We begin to grieve alone because people become afraid of making others uncomfortable. Can you believe that? Right? They start to hide behind the tears, they hide behind the triggers, they hide behind difficult days. They smile while honestly on the inside they're struggling, because we try to make others feel comfortable, right? But while we're the ones that are grieving. And something that I've learned is that suppressing grief does not heal grief. Yep, can't suppress it, because eventually, somehow, it's going to pop, it's going to come out, right? And it can come out in anxiety, through emotional exhaustion. All of a sudden, you're exhausted, you're angry, you're irritable, or you may just become numb, or you may want to isolate, right? But we have to remember that God is close to the brokenhearted. Oh my goodness. And I had to remember that in Psalms 34. And you know why I love this scripture? Because it reminds us that God is near to my grief. He's not only in celebrations and in my joy and in victory. He is close to me when I'm hurting, when I'm crying, when I'm going through it. So if he's close to me, I want to tell you, stop being a grief blocker. Yes, a grief blocker. And I'm going to explain that. This is someone that pretty much blocks you from grieving. So if somebody comes to you and they trust you enough with their pain, don't rush them through it. Don't minimize it. Don't compare it. Don't silence it. Sometimes grieving people, they don't need the solutions. They don't need you to fix them. They just need you to show up. They just need your presence, right? Someone that's willing to say, I know you miss them. Tell me about them. I'm just here. What was the favorite thing about them that you enjoyed or that you missed? How would you like to celebrate them? And that's so important because sometimes presence heals more than words could ever heal. And I realize that people become grief blockers because they are uncomfortable, right? So think about that. How dare, because of the fact that you're uncomfortable, you're trying to stop my tears from flowing and say something ridiculous, especially when you have not even been through what our family has been through. It was a very traumatic experience. And again, I can't say this enough. I understand that people mean well, but the cliches that we hear, whether they're faith based, they're not helpful, right? Because if Jesus even cried knowing that he would perform a miracle, after losing Lazarus, and he cried, right? That tells me that I have permission to grieve, right? Because if the greatest man on earth, right, Jesus Christ, when he was here, he even grieved, right? He even grieved the fact that his friends couldn't even support him when he was about to get crucified, right? So he had to carry that pain alone, right? So the process that he was about to go through, that was difficult. You see, some people, they become like Jobs. They sit with you for a little bit, they go through the process, but when that process starts taking longer, they're like, no, now I'm annoyed. What did you do, dude? What did you do to upset the man? Because look, you must have did something because now we're becoming judgmental, right? And what we need is just someone's presence. That's all we need. But we get to a point sometimes that we are so uncomfortable holding someone else's pain. So I just want to say this as I begin to close to anyone that is grieving today, whether you're grieving a child, whether you're grieving a spouse, whether you're grieving a parent, a sibling, a friend. I want you to know this. You do not need permission to feel. You do not need permission to grieve and to miss the person that you love. This is someone that existed here. And you do not need permission to put on a mask in front of others because of the fact that they feel uncomfortable. Right. So I want you to just take this picture, take this narrative out of your mind. I want you to say their name. I want you to tell their stories. I want you to cry when you need to. And I want you to laugh when memories come up and you remember something. I want you to honor the love, right, for them. Because grief and love, they're so connected. They're so connected. So I just want to thank you guys for sitting with me through this conversation today. And if you like this episode, or if you know anyone that may benefit from it, maybe they're also going through a grieving process, please go ahead and share it with them. I definitely love reading comments, so feel free to leave me a comment. So if this resonated with you, definitely feel free to share it because these conversations, they're just so important. And we need to have more of them, more of the raw ones. Those are tough to have. Just being able to just share your heart and not have to sugarcoat it. So until next time, this is Soul Conversations with Z, healing in the raw. Hasta la próxima. Sale, vale.